you doing?
How are you, Danny?
I'm well. It's so good to be here with you.
Good morning, Katrine.
Hello. Hello. I'm not going to take a lot of time to do an introduction, but let me just say that we have 82 people that have said they want to be part of this. So I think that says a lot for our masterclass leader, Dr. Danny Friedland, and also I think for the topic, leading consciously in times of stress. Danny has been a friend to us all for a long time, and I met him many, many years ago at a conference in LA. When I heard him speak, I realized he's a medical doctor. He has all this knowledge and he gets it with the wellness world. And so we met and have been involved with a lot of projects, one of which was the Wellness Evidence website. So Danny, thank you for having really been the inspiration for that and for helping us put that together.
You're welcome.
So, and you've been to many of our summits, and I am going to turn it over to you. Well, maybe, I don't know, if you want to say a few things, Nancy, about the
Yes.
Masterclass series,
Yes.
and then Danny, over to you for what I know is going to be a great hour together.
Thank you, Susie. So I'm Nancy Davis and I work with Susie. I think I know most of you. Welcome to our second Wellness Masterclass. This is something we're going to be doing every Wednesday morning at this time with extraordinary people like Danny, who can help us through this time, look to the future, and address a topic of great interest to everyone, as he will today. I'm going to moderate, and that all that means is I'm going to try to keep everybody honest about time, keep things on track. This is really Danny's show. I just wanted to say that, he's got you all muted, which he can do globally. When you have something to say after he presents and you're in the Q&A period or whatever, you will unmute, and that if you just go to the bottom left of your Zoom window, you'll see a little microphone with a line through it. You'll click that, you'll unmute, and then mute yourself again when you're done speaking. The top right of the Zoom screen has a choice of views. If you choose gallery view, you'll see the mosaic, the global mosaic that I see. And if you want to pose a question or have an issue along the way, to the center bottom of your Zoom window, there's a chat function. And if you simply click that, it opens a window to the right and you can post a question or say, my audio's not working, or, whatever you want to say. And that's really it. This is going to be an extraordinary session. We are grateful to Danny for his time and expertise. And Danny, it's all yours.
Oh, well, thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Susie. Thank you for all coming. It's such a joy to be here. And just to put this in context, I was on last week, I was on the call with Susie, and we were talking about mental wellness. And Susie at the end of the call asked, does anybody here have any innovative ideas for cultivating wellness? And I said, well, we're on Zoom already, and it's, can we create a wellness experience while we're together? And that comes when you think about wellness. Really, fundamentally, it's about how do we optimize our relationship with ourselves and others. And that resides in optimizing conversation. First, optimizing our internal conversation, and then knowing how to optimize and choreograph the external conversation. So I want to introduce you to a choreography that I hopefully at the end of this will leave you with an experience of wellness. It's also going to thread into really an understanding about what does conscious leadership at this time, what does conscious leadership at this time have to do with the elevation and the facilitation of how we can all cultivate conscious leadership further within ourselves at this time and in the world, at a time where the world needs leaders to be able to elevate humanity. So I'm going to start with a little bit of context before I take you into an exercise. Just ideally it would be about 10 minutes of slides, but the rest of this I wanted to be a conversation. And you'll see where we get into this. So in terms of just the context, and this is called leading consciously in times of stress, just setting the foundation for, where does this term conscious leadership come from? So if you're not familiar with conscious capitalism, This is an international movement founded by companies like Starbucks and Whole Foods and Trader Joe's, Best Buy, Patagonia, and they've all come together, all organizations come together saying, we see business organizations and also nonprofits as being the greatest vehicle for social transformation. And there's never been a greater time of need than I think we're in now. And the mission statement of the organization is, we exist to elevate humanity. And they run on 4 tenets. The first tenet is higher purpose drives. This is a time to tap into purpose. Second one is making sure all stakeholders are accounted for. And then it's about conscious leadership that drives conscious culture and a thriving environment of well-being, which is so aligned to the work that we do over here at the Global Wellness Institute. Righteous Soja wrote a book. He's one of the co-founders of Conscious Capitalism and found that companies that practice on conscious capitalism principles outperform the S&P by 10 to 1. So I became absolutely fascinated in the science behind that. And I wanted to understand. And what I find incredibly helpful is to actually underpin this all in an understanding of neuroscience. So I want to give you the context of this and the powerful thing, particularly now when we're going through a time of incredible disorientation with coronavirus. This idea that actually, if we can understand how our brain works, I mean, it's almost an act of compassion. We can know we're not flawed, we're not weak, and we're not isolated, and we're connected to everybody else's biology. So I love the way that understanding how our brain works can help us make sense of what we're going through. So there are a number of ways of organizing this. One of the most powerful ways of organizing the brain for this work is a concept called the triune brain. So we have, it's an evolutionary model of the brain where the brain develops from the bottom up and the back forward. And there are 3 main components: the brainstem, the limbic system, and then the neocortex, the highest, most evolved part of the brain, and the prefrontal cortex in particular. And what's powerful about this is essentially the brain maps against Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So our brain fundamentally is safety first. It's safety first. The brain stem's all about safety. Then as we go into the limbic system, many functions here, one of which is pair bonding and nurturing. So this gives rise to love and belonging. And then this highest part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex in particular, gives us our capacity for high performance conscious leadership. So this gives us, in these circuits, you have circuits of emotional regulation, you have circuits of actually social awareness and compassion, which enables you to relate well to others. These are the circuits of decision-making and strategy. And these are the circuits of mindful, being able to watch the mental stream of your mind and actually pause and make a wise decision. So in essence, the aspiration, when we talk about conscious leadership, or we talk about conscious capitalism, say we exist to elevate humanity, and now we're talking about what does conscious leadership look like, we really, are looking at what does it mean for us to lead from our higher selves? What does it mean for us to lead from our highest selves? And all of this is Maslowian. It's a Maslowian construct. So elevating humanity, leading from our higher selves is Maslowian. And here's why it's needed now more than ever. There's a formula that dictates which way the flows run in the brain. And the formula is, what is the relationship to the demands we're facing to the resources we have to engage? And when demands exceed resources, we go into a threat response and we go into a safety phase. We go into a reactive mindset. And the demands have never, I think the demands are extremely high. We all had demands before coronavirus. Now another layer of demand and all the resources that are disrupted. So many of us as leaders have tipped. And we can find ourselves, so if you find yourself in a fear-based state right now, that's completely understood from this. That's what the brain does. Now, some of that's adaptive. By the way, when we go into a reactive mindset, some of that's adaptive, particularly around physical safety, around preventing coronavirus contagion, taking care of business to kind of make sure that our business survives. But some of that can be maladaptive, because when we actually go into our fight and flight responses, particularly when we're fighting against psychological threats like, stress and self-doubt, we can fight for control and take flight from things that lead us feeling out of control. And so we can actually also manifest down here a reactive mindset that strains relationships. So if you find yourself now being edgy with your partner, your kids, your colleagues, that comes with the territory as well. And so sometimes we can do more harm than good over here. So if you feel like you're losing your mind and going into this mind, the place of mindless reactivity, just know, please, we're all in this together. We're all going through this right now. So what is conscious leadership? Conscious leadership is the ability to rise. What are our skills and capacity to rise fundamentally by creating, now doing the deep work of being able to actually cultivate psychological safety within ourselves, reconnect with a sense of kindness, love, and belonging, and then reorient up to a place of significance. And I would suggest that the actual experience, the aspiration of wellness that we're all cultivating within the global wellness community is Maslowian as well. When we come together, we ask ourselves, how do we create psychological safety together? How do we create a community of love and belonging? And how do we actually elevate, integrating and optimizing mind, body, and spirit to actually deliver on the wellness moonshot to be in a place of significance? I mean, that creates a cultivation of wellness. And the key over here for leaders is this, is that we don't only as a leader oscillate between these reactive and creative mindsets. Because we're all wired to connect, our leadership, ultimately, leadership is an act of influence. Leadership is an act of influence. And because we're wired to connect, you cannot not have influence. And so the real question is, as a leader, am I having positive influence right now? Or am I having negative influence in my environment? And their wiring is this, that ultimately, if we're actually in reactivity and we're experiencing fight and flight responses, we're triggering fight and flight in somebody else who's triggering our fight and flight, and we're around in a cycle of reactivity, round and round we go. And by the way, when we trigger reactivity in somebody else, they're taking that reactivity into their network. And so we're not only in a time of physical contagion with coronavirus, more importantly, we're in a time of social and emotional contagion. And as leaders, you want to ask yourself, what kind of contagion do I want to have? And so the flip side is, what does a cycle of creativity look like? And that cycle is fundamentally the ability to step into a cycle of the ability to receive and give love with others, to receive others more deeply with empathy and understanding at this point in time, and to give with authenticity and care. And so when we bring back Maslow, ultimately, when you look at this, when we're in fight, flight, trigger, we're actually now caving into safety, foregoing love and belonging, and what gives us a sense of significance. And when we do this over a period of time, we become exhausted, disconnected, and a reduced sense of significance. And literally we become, that's the definition of burnout. So we can get into a state of burnout if we don't attend, and that overlaps with depression. And so we're in this for the long haul. That's the possibility for where we might go. And if we do, again, have compassion, because that's what your brain is doing as best as it can to, in a situation of high demands and low resources, that's what your brain does to protect itself. Now, here's the thing as a leader. The key question as a leader is this: understanding demands and resources, which is the question we can ask ourselves mindfully. Am I showing up as a demand or a resource for somebody else right now? That can really help us reorient into the way we receive and give with others. And when we receive and give with others, and we develop psychological safety, belonging, and significance, and we learn and grow to elevate, we build resilience. We grow within ourselves and we grow our relationships. So the promise is we can come out of this even stronger than before. So there is a choreography of elevation. There is a powerful choreography of elevation. And the choreography is, can we be mindful of the questions we ask in our internal dialogue? Can we be mindful? So when we're under stress, we tend to ask questions like, what if in every catastrophe that could happen? Or what's wrong with me and what's wrong with other people? And it really takes us down into this cycle. But if we can become disciplined to ask better questions, we can learn how to elevate ourselves individually and collectively. And that's the power of being in community around us. And there's a powerful choreography, a well-worn track of choreography that inspires questions that elevate. And this gets us into the world of appreciative inquiry. Appreciative inquiry involves a cycle of really unlocking individual and collective strengths, unlocking collective wisdom in a group. And it's a process of discover, dream, design, and deploy. And this process has been, it was founded by David Cooper Ryder in the 1980s at Cleveland Clinic. And there are many organizations, United Nations, Google, Apple, Starbucks, that engage appreciative inquiry to unlock collective wisdom individually and collectively. And I've been trained in the process called the exchange process, where I've been leading groups through this process. It's incredibly powerful for unlocking collective wisdom in large groups, even up to 1,000 people in a conference, all in one day. And these are the fundamental. There are 6 foundational questions that relate to the appreciative inquiry process. And in a moment, I'm going to give you a slice, an experience of a slice of this. So the first 3 questions focus on discovering purpose and strengths. And then we'll move into a question on dream, design, and deploy. So part of unlocking collective strengths is beginning with a purpose question, aligning with that first step of conscious capitalism, discovering purpose. And the question of discovering purpose is, what are the outcomes that matter most now and why? So we anchor in purpose, and then we're going to move from the past into the present and into the future. And so then we're going to move into the next question, which is discovering the best of the past. So when you look at an issue, let's say we're asking a question right now of how do I grow? How do I take better care of myself and others around me? And why does it matter? Because if I do so, I'll become more resilient and strong and will come out of this with a greater sense of wellness and well-being for the future. So then you might say, okay, well, if that's the purposeful question, when have you been most successful with this in the past? When have you ever had a time when you've been through a major challenge and you've come through that? So you're remembering the best of the past to clarify the best of the present. So it helps you clarify, well, based on you getting through this then, what does that reveal to you about the strengths you have right now? What does that reveal to you about the strengths you have right now? And then you go into dreaming of your best future. So you begin to say things like, well, if you can see, and if you can really connect with those strengths flourishing, what would you imagine for your better future? What would you imagine? What does that best future look like? And then you go into strategic deployment, the design and deploy state. What strategies specifically will best enable your success? And what action steps will you take to achieve your results? So that's the flow. In summary, appreciative inquiry is the best of what was, is, and could be. And again, I love the way that actually this aligns with the Global Wellness Institute, this idea about convening to reflect on the past and shape the future, right? It's so powerful, it's so well aligned. So here is the experience I want to invite you into right now. I'm so excited about this. I'm going to give you a slice of this. And the slice of this is you can take these 6 foundational questions and really kind of cultivate which questions you want to curate, first of all, and then create a choreography that unlocks the collective wisdom. And so in a moment, I'm going to invite you into what's called a paired interview. And I want you to write these questions down right now as I'm going through them. Please write these questions down, because in a moment, I'm going to invite you to get into pairs. I'm going to put you into a breakout room with somebody else. And I'm going to invite you to interview your partner on these 3 questions, and then you'll switch. And again, this is an interview, meaning it's not a conversation. So I'm going to invite the first person, let's say interviewer 1, will interview your partner with these 3 questions. You ask in sequence, or you can ask them all together. And this is now, you can see, this is a question from the past, recent past, present, and future. So here's the questions. when have you seen humanity at its best over the last month? When have you seen humanity at its best over the last month? Question 2, how are you evolving as a conscious leader right now? And what is your highest hope for what can emerge from all of this for yourself, your organization, and the world at large? Okay.
Danny, may I just interrupt to ask a question? Will we be asking all 3 of these questions in the interview?
Yes, you will. And so you can ask them one at a time, but so it's interviewer 1 all the way through, and then you'll switch and we'll have 7 minutes each.
And is it important for us to take notes of when we're conducting the interview? Do we write down, take notes about what the other person is saying?
If it helps you listen, if it helps you attend, the key over here for the interview is this. There's something magical about listening deeply to somebody and being asked. So the interviewer, it's asking with kind of kindness and curiosity, taking a deep, deep interest in somebody. And you can ask each question, first that question, say, well, let me follow up. How are you evolving as a leader right now? And then what's your hope for the future? And again, 7 minutes. If you don't get to answer all the questions, that's okay. I mean, the important thing is I'm going to put a broadcast into the window to say switch. So I want to make sure you each have 7 minutes. So when that happens, please, just do the switch. I've just put the questions also in the chat window over here, just so you can see them right there. If you want to copy those from here, you can do so. Alina, you have a question?
So Danny, I'm wondering if I could invite you to, in your words, define what consciousness means. Because consciousness can mean various different things and it's used as an adjective. So I'm wondering if we could have your definition of consciousness.
Elaine, what I'd love to do, the part of interviewing is it's an opportunity for you to express your experience of that. So it's making meaning of that for yourself. So I really want to respect what your definition is. So if somebody asks you, how are you evolving as a conscious leader? That's your unique thumbprint on your answer. Yeah.
Also just want to know, will we be reporting back anything, or what happens when the interviews are over?
Exactly. So we'll come back, and I think looking at the time, if we're on track, Nancy, we'll have 15 minutes for this paired interview, and then we'll have another 15 minutes to actually do a report out. Now, here's the choreography that's really important. So first of all, it's that experience as the interviewer, just showing up with love in the way you're asking the question. Again, it's not a conversation. You're interviewing somebody, so there's no commentary. You're asking the question and you're listening. And then here's the key in terms of before you switch. The key is that after your interviewee has shared, before you switch, the interviewer gets to share what I most appreciate about you and what you've shared is. So this is a way for the interviewee to feel really heard. So the interviewer gives appreciation for what they've heard. Okay. What I most appreciate about you and what you've shared is, and then you switch. Okay. So I'm about to put you into rooms. Now, the first thing we have to do is, please, you all have to come on video. You have to come on video because it's really, if you're going into a room and you're not on video with somebody, that's, kind of like it's a little bit more challenging. I'm going to put you in a room. Beatrice, how many people do we have right now?
It looks like we're 45.
Wow, amazing. Okay, so we have an even number. So that means I'm going to create 22 rooms. Okay, so this is 2 participants per room. Okay, you're going to have to accept that in a moment you're going to get an invitation to join the room. This is all random. So as you enter the room, decide who's going to interview first, and then who'll be interviewer 1, and then just go straight into the question. So you make time. You can mention just a warm hello, and then go into the questions, and then again switch. If there are any technical challenges, whoever can't get into the room, I'll stay with you in the main room, and we can have that discussion together. So if we have any technical challenges, okay? You ready to go in? And then look for my broadcast. You'll see a broadcast from me about when it's time to switch. Okay?
You will repeat the question?
Yes. So what I'll do, actually, I'll put it in the broadcast right at the outset. Okay.
And the questions are in the chat on the side. So bottom of your Zoom screen, hit chat and you'll see it.
Right. And just remembering those questions. First question is humanity at its best. How are you evolving as a leader right now? And what's your hope for the future? Humanity at its best. How are you evolving as a leader and your hope for the future? Okay. Here we go. So I'm opening all the rooms. Enjoy. So Laura, do you want to, I know we're recording, so let's not pick up on you on the recording of it. Do you want to share a little bit about your answer to those 3 questions for yourself? Well, you'll have to unmute though. Are you able to unmute?
Down here.
Yes.
Hi, this is wonderful, Danny. Thank you. I think I'm sure we all needed it, but this has been really emotional, and it's really helpful to see how this plays out. I think the most
one thing I want to mention. We in this room we are recording, and so if that's okay with you, please feel free to share. But I wanted you to know that up front, because that will be on tape. I want to respect that for you, but please share.
Thank you. So I think the best part of humanity has certainly been that people have adhered to some of the restrictions. They're conscious of other people, and thinking beyond themselves, which is pretty impressive. And then to the extent that I've seen people really reaching out to help and support, particularly the elderly. That's been really amazing. The second question was for myself.
How are you evolving as a leader right now? And Christine's joined us, and Christine, you're welcome to kind of just enter in this conversation as well.
So for me, it's been a challenge because it has shaken me. And so I really needed this class to help me see how the stress was really affecting me from all different levels. I think that for me, the best thing that I've been able to do is stand in faith. And that has really helped a lot. And being encouraging and, leaning on faith and praying with people. And that has been the key thing for me, because I've struggled with some of the other things.
I appreciate that. And what's your hope for the future that might emerge, through this for yourself, for your community, for the world?
Really, for me, I've been looking and trying to seek. I always believe that nothing happens by accident, and that there's a purpose and maybe a repositioning for me and my business, my family, that will evolve out of this. So I'm trying to find exactly where that is. What I see for the future is, my hope for the future is that the compassion and sensitivity that we've seen shared in our communities today, that will be a prolonged effect versus just an immediate impact based on the current situation, that it'll carry out for some time.
Well, Laurie, what I most appreciate about you and what you've shared is, first of all, your humanity. You're just the way that you've shared, just so openly and with such care, and that you're speaking into your hope, not only as it's derived from faith, your act of faith, but your hope comes and is beautifully integrated with your hope for compassion for the future. And the depth of, the wisdom of faith is compassion. And so I just love the way you've thread that. It's so inspiring to see how you thread that together.
Thank you.
You're welcome. What I want to do is I want to broadcast a message into the room just to let people know to switch in a moment. And then Christine, if you would like to share as well, I would welcome you sharing with us too. So just give me a moment to actually get this broadcast going into the room. Hi, Christine, how are you?
Hello. Hi.
Hello. So would you like to answer those, those questions in terms of, and again, we're recording in this room, just to give you a heads up. So I just want to comfort to share, and what you've seen, as being greatest examples of humanity over the last month.
We've seen untold numbers of incredible gifts of humanity, of people taking care of each other, of people reprioritizing family, love, focus, taking care of each other, from neighbors passing and sharing what they have to clients, understanding priorities and working together towards the way things should be. I mean, in many ways, it's our very best selves as goes forward. And these are things that we hope that we were doing before, but we see that it highlights our best side. People coming together, friends you haven't spoken to forever, just reaching out, making that time and reminding you to make that time to connect to the people that have been instrumental in your lives, the people you work with, rethinking how you work together.
Yeah,
I think that brings us sort of naturally to the second point, which is we've been spending a lot of time rethinking how we work with our teams. We've all been remote for almost 2 to 3 months now with, I work globally, and our team is everywhere. And understanding that we need to slow down and really gather people in our team meetings, not just about agenda items, but about holistic, physical, mental, spiritual, financial well-being.
yes.
And really giving individuals the chance to share in a way that maybe a typical meeting didn't used to.
Yeah.
And we're finding this is growing the relationships. It's also growing the individuals. Many people on the team are becoming more resilient, more independent, and we're asking them to do what they think is best within these parameters, making sure they know we're available at any time, and seeing some of the fruits of that being some very strong individuals throughout that are starting to lead on their own. So I think that's one of the things that's been consciously working towards in terms of our leadership, and it goes at many scales, how we work together, how we connect.
For you personally, how have you been evolving as a leader?
Well, these are many things that I've personally been working to integrate, is just to be able to listen and slow down, and understanding some of these aspects that you shared about how our bodies, stop nurturing themselves when they're in stress mode, stop healing themselves. And actually our creativity, which, I'm a creative action designer, architect, if I don't have people in their creative mode, we don't have the benefit of their best, right? So for me, the idea is, how do I help everybody that we're working with de-stress a little bit? And I found one of the ways to do that has been individual calls, one-on-one with every single person that I work with, repeatedly, with no agenda, up to them. And some great work is getting completed, and sometimes it's anecdotal.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And what's your hope for the future that could emerge through this for you, your team, your organization, and the world at large?
I certainly hope that we will have a more resilient, healthy community. As a person who works to design spaces where people live, work, and create their environments, I hope that we'll be more conscious of the variabilities and the aspects that really need to be incorporated into these spaces. I think just by the nature of working remotely, people are already starting to recognize what needs to happen. And to use the word that you were using earlier, we talk a lot about choreographing the space that we create. So how do you choreograph those experiences? And I see that we're maybe jump frogging, accelerating where we could go by this period of consideration. So I do have a great hope. I also hope we'll be more resilient in many ways in terms of how our systems can be working to support people. I think our buildings will be more resilient in terms of how they take care of not only security items, but also, microbial considerations and things like that. So there's a lot of areas that we can absolutely leapfrog into the future.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing, Gil. So what I most appreciate about you and just what you've shared is, what emerges is the way you hold space. The way you hold space and the way you're holding space for your team, really with a lot of compassion at this time, and allowing them to actually allow for the emergence of their growth and insight by holding an open agenda. That's pretty courageous, because oftentimes when you go into a crisis situation, we want to lock everything down and get very prescriptive. that you can hold open a place of somebody to really kind of nurture, to truly nurture their growth. And one of the things that I just, I also love and just I sense as well is as you hold space, I would just also encourage you to hold space for yourself for this work too. And I really appreciate your spirit. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So, well, I think I'm going to start calling folks back. We'll just broadcast, and then I'm going to close the rooms, and it'll be kind of cool to reassemble right now. It's so, I'm so happy that you joined me in the large room, both of you to share, and just really thank you for your courage and generosity to also sharing on this recording as well. I'm sure it's going to be very meaningful for a lot of people listening as well.
Hello.
Welcome back, Nancy.
Thank you. Everybody's popping back in.
That's so cool. It is just so amazing.
This process was wonderful.
Oh, I'm so excited to hear, Don. Well, what we'll do is we'll unpack this, and when everybody gets back into the room, I'll just give a way that we can share with each other right now. I'm so excited that you had a wonderful experience, and looking forward to hearing more about what that experience was in a moment.
And Danny, I'll keep an eye on the time. Maybe by the time everyone's back and you give us a little direction, it'll be 10:15, and we'll take it to 10:25 or something.
Perfect. Okay. So welcome back, everyone. So what I'm going to ask is just for a few shares. As Nancy says, we've got about 10 minutes left. And just, I'm going to invite a few of you to share, the question of appreciation. What did you most appreciate about your partner in terms of what they shared? Or what did you most appreciate about yourself? Or what did you most appreciate about the experience itself? So to share, there are a couple of ways you can do it. All you have to do is press your space bar. If you hold your space bar down, it's almost like a walkie-talkie. You'll come off mute, or if you want to just unmute in the bottom corner, just whoever feels moved to share, just really welcome your sharing of your experience. What did you most appreciate about your partner, yourself, and or the experience itself?
Daniel, this is Daniela.
Hi, Daniela. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Well, thank you.
Good. Great session. I really appreciated the honesty and the clarity from my partner. It was a very warming experience talking to her.
Wonderful. Thank you, Daniela. Thank you so much.
And what I appreciate the most was the connection right away, a real connection, and to go deep to the root of what's going on. And I felt received, and it was, thank you, Sarah.
Oh, that's beautiful. So you felt that cycle that we spoke about, receiving and giving, right?
Yeah.
This experience of what it means to receive and give. And did you notice, how many of you noticed, let me ask you, how many of you felt psychologically safe? You actually felt like you built trust during the experience. So this is the experience or the foundation of wellness. Our ability to give and receive with each other with authenticity and care, with empathy and understanding and authenticity and care. That alone builds psychological safety and connection, which then enables us to actually hold a platform for imagine, what could be. So who else would like to share?
I wouldn't mind to say, I had the most wonderful opportunity to meet with Alison Howland, and we brought each other to tears. We really brought each other to tears almost instantly. We were able to completely connect and be vulnerable. And Alison shared me had so much depth and meaning, and that was really, this is an extraordinary time. It's an extraordinary opportunity for all of us, and this is really beautiful, Danny. Thank you.
You're welcome, John. And John, there's so much, what I love about Zoom as well is we can communicate with each other without almost saying anything. And so I could even just be silent here, and John, John, I want to send you a message right now. So we can communicate with each other in this medium in intangible ways. And the essence of what you said, there was an element, John, of the content of what you shared, but there was a deeper element of the context. Your love and compassion came through so powerfully. Thank you. Appreciate that. Who else would like to share?
I'm happy to share. I was resisting in case anybody else wanted to, but I was very fortunate to find a very close friend in my room with me. And so we were able to, obviously, this is Jennifer Hawkins, completely connect, catch up on each other's lives, and also both be very teary about humanity and the power of what is happening. And to share a sort of fondest hope for the future is that we don't lose that humanity when everyone's well again and the world goes back to whatever it goes back to. I think not maybe back, but what goes forward to something new, that the humanity that's been driving this, that the humanity that's filling the void that politics leaves and everything else doesn't go away, because I think it's been a powerful lesson to everyone. And that's something that is certainly my fondest hope.
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. And there is a, in that experience, there are additional steps in the appreciative inquiry process, which involves intentionality. So the questions that were choreographed here as this in the slice was in the past, what's our reflection of the best of humanity, how we're unpacking and connecting with our strengths of evolution right now, and then our hope. That's the vision for the future, our hope for the future. The next two steps are about strategic implementation. And so it's in this place where I think the Global Wellness Institute and the Summit has its greatest promise, is to ask the questions, what are our strategies to both leverage the opportunity? I mentioned to Susie on our last call, never waste a crisis. Let's not waste a crisis. So as deeply, as deeply as, many people are suffering, the equal beauty is it's created such disruption, it's creating a place for birth anew. And so this is our opportunity as conscious leaders to rise, to elevate to our higher selves, and then collectively in community with our collective strengths, to gather together to shape the future. Now's the time to shape the future. And then, what I'm imagining in the summit, the questions are, how do we strategically leverage the beauty of what we've just experienced, the beauty and the promise of what we've experienced or what we're experiencing, to make sure that this endures? And then you get into very much, what are our strategies for doing so? What are our action steps for taking the lead in this movement, for ensuring that this is not forgotten? So let me share something else here. There is, and I'm going to do something meta right now. What I mean by meta is just, process the experience of what we're going through. And one of the most important things that we can all cultivate in our learning is our ability to learn. This idea, the higher the altitude, the greater the leverage. And if you actually take something at such high altitude that you say, I'm going to commit in my growth and development to learning how to learn most effectively, that allows you to pour gasoline on everything. And there is an active learning cycle that enables you to make a curriculum of anything. You can make a curriculum of anything. And so the active learning cycle is this. It begins with an acknowledgement. It begins with an acknowledgement that content and experience alone doesn't create transformation and change. That's a bold statement. Might sound contrarian. Content and experience alone doesn't create change. And the evidence of that is history repeats itself, right? Content and experience doesn't create change. And you had a powerful experience right now. So that alone won't necessarily endure. But here's what we're doing now in this meta. The two other steps are the key steps. So content experience doesn't create change. It's the metabolism of the content and experience that does. It's the metabolism of the content experience. So when you have an experience, or you actually are exposed to content, it's the ability to then move into a place of reflection. What are the insights that are emerging for me right now? What in this matters most? What am I here to learn? How can I help? This can help me deeper connect with myself, connect with others, and better express myself and be of even greater service. So there's a quality of reflection that enables you to metabolize the experience. And then the third step of the cycle is, what are we going to practically apply to make sure that this endures? What are we going to practically do with the insight to make sure that the insight moves into manifestation, practical manifestation? And so we're going through this meta process right now where we've had this experience and you're asking these great questions, which is, this is powerful. And part of the insight that may be emerging right now through this experience is, wow, we can actually create a rich conference experience here online in Zoom. We can actually do this, and we can actually be as connected as if we were in the room together, and perhaps even more connected because we're locked on with even greater intimacy. And so it's a revelation with this. It's a revelation that, oh, when we ask great questions and we engage in effective choreography, we can unlock learning and collective wisdom and create meaningful change. So there are no geographic barriers to any of this. And I love the fact that we're a global movement, and then now we're learning that it's wonderful to get together for the annual summits, and we don't have to wait that long either. Because the power that you have is the community you've assembled, and that community is enduring. And so we're developing this insight, and we're learning how to learn. We're learning about the power. And then we're going to say, how do we continue convening and then engage with very intentional strategy from that moves into action steps, how we make sure we don't lose any of this, and we take the lead within our organizations and within our communities to advance this.
Jenny, I'm going to, if I can interrupt just for 1 second, there's 5 minutes, and I wonder if other people want to contribute something either from their breakout session or something else before we have to wrap up. If anybody, we want to hear from other people if it's possible.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you for keeping us on track. Hi, Elena.
So for me, what's fascinating about what you said at the very beginning, Danny, is that you use the Maslowian model, and I'm near and dear to my heart. And one of the things that I found very fascinating about what you've just outlined for us is that there's a chance here for something that Maslow wrote about very late in his work, which is not widely known, but is the most important part of his work. So after self-actualization, and it's probably evident that everybody in this group is self-actualized, okay? But the piece that a lot of people don't talk about Maslow is the self-transcendence. And that is the key critical piece, because unless, and in the wisdom traditions, it's called the witness position. That is to say, you're able to look at yourself looking at yourself. You're able to look at your own filters. And unless you're able, in my humble opinion, to look at your own filters, this work cannot be truly done. And it's the self-transcendence piece that ultimately is the higher purpose, that is a life in total perspective. Not just a human-centric perspective, but a life in total perspective. And this is what
Other hands are going up, I see, and we've got limited time. So Danny, if we could just grab a few other comments. I think Alina unlocked something here. So Wendy?
Yes, thank you, Alina. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Wendy, go ahead.
Mine is very simple. I'm looking at everyone on the screen, and I have to thank Susie and Nancy, because without the Global Wellness Summit, I would have never met Danny, who's become such a good friend and an inspiration to all of us. And I think for a moment, if we just look at each other on these screens, and the gratitude that I feel right now is, I could cry. I'm overwhelmed with gratitude for this community. And it's very simple. I wish for everyone good health, and may we continue to be able to meet and support each other and help humanity. So thank you to everyone.
Wendy, that was beautiful.
Daniel, on a practical question, if you were invited to have a seat on the administration's task force on the coronavirus, what would be the highest hope that could emerge from this experience?
Yeah, you know, the aspect, so many people are involved in strategy and implementation, and ultimately it's context that trumps content. Context trumps content. And it's the expression, it's the holding of space. And I think what's being squandered immensely is the lack, at times, the lack of compassion, the lack of humanity. It's an opportunity for us to actually step up as leaders to demonstrate first that sense of empathy and care within which the work gets done. So I would really, you know, on the task force, be very intentional for reframing the experience in which we're engaging the strategic implementation.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question.
Danny, do one more quick one from Charles, and then I'm going to ask Susie to say something, and then I'm going to ask you, Danny, if you'd unmute everybody after Susie. But Charles first, just for a minute.
Sure. I was speaking to Michelle Gamble, and I really appreciated the fact that she had been on a lot of the task forces and a lot of the conversations that have been enabled by the Institute recently. And she learns a lot of knowledge, but then she brings it back to her local community through a health happy hour, which they do on Zoom and then out into her local area. And I really appreciated the fact that she's getting this knowledge from this great network that we have and then sharing it at a local level, because wellness for me, at the very fundamental level, happens at our neighbourhoods, happens in our communities, happens at our workplace. It happens at the ground level. And we as a global community have an ability to share it in our local area. So that was really profound that Michelle was grabbing that knowledge and sharing it locally. So
thank you, Charles. It's wonderful, and it's a great thing to do to bring it back. Susie, do you want to say something, and then we'll ask Danny to unmute?
Yes, thank you all for being on this call. I am humbled to remember 14 years ago when we started the Global Wellness Summit, and we were wanting to sort of put in words what we were all about. And at that time, we chose the words, joining together, shaping the future. And 14 years later, I can't think of better words than those. And we're all part of it. And I'm just, you know, feel blessed. And, you know, Danny, you've been great. I want to just mention that Beatrice is going to send out sort of a thank you and information about who was on the call. And we're going to include Danny's, you know, website and the book and all of that, because he's been gracious and, you know, not spending any time on that. But clearly, Danny, we're going to look to you to help us continue to move forward in a really positive way. This was a very moving experience, and I'm very, very grateful. And thank you. And if you can unmute everyone.
Yeah, unmute everyone.
And we just want to give you a hand.
I'm doing that back to you. So much love and appreciation.
Thank you, Danny. Thank you for everything, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you all, everybody.
Thank you.
Be well.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. You will.
Good
night, Carolyn.
Thank you, Susie. It's wonderful.
Thank you, Danny. That was fantastic. I love the breakout rooms. The breakout rooms are great.
Yeah, it's such,
Very powerful.
The word that comes to me, Susie, is just nourishing. Just this act of us coming together. I just leave you, feeling so nourished and really optimistic.
Yes.
Optimistic.
Yeah. And I love what you said. I mean, we can do a lot on Zoom. We don't have to necessarily fly around the world, although we still like doing that once a year. But clearly, there's a lot we can do in the meantime. And that's a silver lining for our organization.
Yeah.
We're learning here.
Indeed. Indeed.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you
so much. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, Katrine.
Thank you, Susie and Danny. It was incredible.
Thank you.
Michelle. Bye, Bob Henry. Nina, thank
Take
you.
care. Thank you, Susie.
Bye-bye, Don and Karina. Bye-bye, Alina.
Bye, Lily. Don Ardell, good question at the end there. John
Thank
Stewart.
you, Susie.
Bye-bye.
Wonderful
Thank
to see you all.
Daniela.
This was just fantastic, Susie.
Bye.
Really, what a great idea. Fabulous.
Thank you.
Thank you, Danny.
All
You're
Danny.
you're incredible, Danny. You are just
I
incredible.
love you, John. I love
Just lift
you.
us right up. Thank
I
you.
miss you. I miss you.
Yeah, I miss you too.
Okay, this has turned into a really different kind of experience now. You guys want to get in your own room?
Bye-bye.
Rent a room.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.